Good morning, Adam Taxin here in Helena, Montana, in a residential neighborhood near Mount Helena, which we'll get to in a minute. It's a sunrise report. I haven't given you one for a few days. I was traveling out here, taking care of a few other things. But let's take a look at the sun. It's not so easy to see. In Montana, you have a lot of mountains. The name is Montana for a reason. There you get the dawn a little bit. You're not going to be able to see too much sunrise. I know my connection is weak. Hopefully that'll work out. It did snow here last night, so I am going to show you. I'm going to walk up the street in this residential area, talk about the news a little bit as advertised, and give you a great view of Mount Helena, which is not that high, but good place for hiking. Did some hiking there the other day. But let's get to the news as I give you this view of a residential neighborhood in Helena, Montana, where I am right now. A little bit cold. One expects that kind of thing. It was just a dusting of snow. So if, say, you're in Naples, if you just join this from, I don't know, Naples, and you hang out at golf courses there, you don't get to see this kind of thing all that much. You don't get to see that much snow in the Northeast and Midwest this winter compared to usual, from what I understand. But let's start off with a few worthwhile things. My general thought with all of this is, there's so much information out there. You don't need me to get individual pieces of information, but I try to pride myself on doing a good job of giving you, you can spend all your life looking at all the information that's coming at you, but just some of it that's a little more worthwhile in my opinion. So, so-called fake news today is related to Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson. Good morning, Gittel. Imagine it's a little warmer where you are, Daytona Beach. So Carson, who is black, of course, and descended from slaves, as opposed to partially descended from slave owners like Barack Obama, Carson apparently scandalously referred to... Should be working. Okay, I'm going to have to hold this hotspot next to it. Okay, so the New York Times is doing its part to advance the agenda here. The New York Times has given the headline, Ben Carson refers to slaves as immigrants in first remarks to HUD staff. Immigrants is in quotes the way they do that. Now we're looking up at a better view of Mount Helena. I'm going to probably stay up there. Now I'll give CNN some credit for what it did with Ben Carson. It actually uses direct quote. Imagine that. CNN, in its headline, has said, it says, Carson, and then the quote, it says, Carson, there were other immigrants who came in the bottom of slave ships, who worked even longer, even harder for less. Can't really expect much more of CNN than what they did there. And it even, let me give you, even though it's a little much for CNN to put in a headline, so they couldn't have done all that, but it writes, well, this is the rest of what Carson said. Sorry, I'm cold. But they too had a dream that one day their sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, great-grandsons, great-granddaughters might pursue prosperity and happiness in this land. And of all the nations in the world, this one, the United States of America, is the only one big enough and great enough to allow all these people to realize their dream. And this is our opportunity to enhance that dream. He had it. Then, of course, it had a video of Don Lemon, and he was skewing it a little bit. He was having his tender, his wide open eyes were looking very tender at that point, and he had his soft, delicate voice saying to his panel, while looking very sincere, I want to play the comments from the HUD Secretary Ben Carson addressing his department employees, where he appears to compare slaves with immigrants. What do you mean appears to? What does that mean? How weaselly a word is that? Yeah, and Davis Knight is pointing out right now, though this is on a tangent, he's pointing out that many Chinese and Irish railroad workers had worse conditions than many slaves, but that's not the point here. The point is he didn't compare slaves to immigrants. He gave a very carefully worded line. It was not an important part of his speech, but anyhow, I want to give a point made by Li Cheng, whose opinion I respect very much. He wrote, no one in attendance at the meeting, including many African-American HUD employees, were offended by Secretary Carson's statements. They were well received. Read this article. And he has one from the Washington Post, which he writes is hardly a right-wing rag. The furor seems to be completely the result of willful and malicious misinterpretation by people who are intent to mine every word and gesture for negativity. What is wrong with these people? Very well put, Lee Chang, who sees eye to eye with me when we see a lot on the Facebook Harvard Class of '93 website. There are a lot of people of such types in our class, let's put it mildly. I personally posted a screenshot of how Facebook presents it, and what Facebook was saying was quite simply, Ben Carson calls slaves immigrants in quotes. And I had a comment with that, which was, look how Facebook, or I called it Fashbook, F-A-S-C-B-O-O-K, tries to skew the words he actually said, creating a way for dullards to mock their better. And then I added the hashtags Ben Carson and hashtag Ben Carson don't speak, you know, so you can say, oh, he just always puts his foot in the mouth. Bad time for me to say that. He always puts his foot in his mouth. And, you know, so it's creating a narrative, getting to know Ben Carson and thinking he's a fool, or maybe he's a brain surgeon with no common sense. Who knows? Now, going on to the, I guess, bigger issue right now. Robert, maybe they're doing the Ben Carson thing because there's nothing to. Maybe Trump has a point about the spying of his office, because that would be a front page story if it were looking bad for Trump, don't you think? But Robert Ave, who I rely on for some good commentary every now and then, he wrote the following. What Trump did Saturday was brilliant. Good morning. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's so pretty out here. What Trump did Saturday was brilliant. For the first time in modern politics, we have a Republican playing the same game as the Dems play. One problem, the Republicans in both houses just don't have the balls or the heart for a fight. Trump can fight these battles while the staff needs to move on to big issues and pass bills. A tweet from David Clark I liked, Sheriff David Clark of Milwaukee. Don't kid yourself, the decision to surveil Trump was not made in a vacuum at DOJ. Obama knew not to leave a trail back to him. And a Facebook friend whom I don't really know and really don't see his stuff that often, and I'm not putting myself in the picture because when I do that, it sort of causes the iPhone 6 to focus elsewhere, and you don't get as good a view of the sun. So that's why I'm doing that. But Alan Bagner writes, my take on this spying on Trump Tower thing. Obama is slimy enough to have actually done it, as he has a history of using government agencies to do his bidding. DOJ, IRS, etc. Then he adds, Trump is nuts enough to jump to conclusions based on little or no evidence and completely to push the idea no matter how much reality contradicts it. So is it true? Who the hell knows? I will believe it when I see the evidence, which I think is fair. That is my view of, you know, that I don't feel as, I'm very pro-Trump, but I'm not going to say 100% that there's no truth that they're saying Trump sometimes jumps to conclusions early. Good morning. How you doing? Okay, Kennedy McGovern wrote me some good stuff here. Kennedy wrote me two things. I think the more recent is this one, and I want to give them both. He writes, I am no lawyer here, and I don't even play one on TV, but it seems to me that, beyond all of the rhetoric, there is some actionable criminal activity on the Obama wiretapping boondoggle. At least I hope there is. There is a difference between illegal and unethical. Obama tried to walk that fine line where no honorable man would tread. Abusing one's power to get the Justice Department to issue warrants on an opposing party's presidential candidate is markedly unethical, but it is not illegal. By itself, that is a scandal for the rhetoric merchants and not the courts. I get that. But that next part, where no crime was uncovered by the taps, and he shared strategic information gained through them with his party's candidate, it seems to this legal novice that is a crime. Again, I am not a lawyer. I am not even a fake TV lawyer who gets sent on covert operations into Russia. Salute Harmon Rab. I don't know what that means. But if there is not a law against this, it's time to write one. The shame of it is presidents can no longer be entrusted to walk an ethical line without their hands being tied by codified law. There's the sunrise. Without their hands being tied by codified law on every minute detail of their power. After Clinton and Obama, I think it is clear that we can no longer leave our presidents without detailed instruction manuals codified into our laws. If there are not laws that were violated here, it is time to get to work writing some. And he also sent me this regarding the deep state. This is a more general commentary. This is a term that your hardcore libertarian types have been using for years. Now it is on everyone's tongue, and I love the topic of conversation because I have dug spy stuff since I was a boy, and first saw Sean Connery doing it for the Queen. But the current level of exposure on this part of government exposes a deep hypocrisy. I mean, what doesn't? Edward Snowden was a hero to the left because he took a swing at this deep state, but he only got to be a hero because he attacked it while President Bush bore the ultimate responsibility. Now that it is being exposed as having crossed the line at the behest of President Obama, a different story. Well, he says, suddenly all of these liberals are reading Tom Clancy novels where the spooks are always the good guys and shouting, "Yay, spies!" Could the left's hypocrisy be any more obvious and ridiculous? Now, just something that Paul Palnick in Columbus, Ohio, I love his stuff, he posted on Facebook, not to me in particular, not a message to me, as some of these are, but I like it. And it's a very general point. Paul Palnick writes, how odd that those liberals who claim to be oh so very tolerant of everyone are the ones who beat up conservatives, deny others free speech, desecrate graves. The anti-Semitic grave desecrator in St. Louis was a black Muslim Democrat, block highways, and never tire of calling others racist. There must be a racist detector degree that so many of them have on their resumes because they all imagine they are qualified to label others as racist. By the way, it was warmer. It must be only 20 right now. But it was like 45 the other day. Not too bad. It was perfect. I did some cross-country skiing. Okay, but the comment about racism and liberals is perfect as a segue into what I'm going to suggest you all read now, which is an article that was in the Wall Street Journal by Shelby Steele yesterday called The Exhaustion of American Liberalism, and it has the subheading, White Guilt Gave Us a Mock Politics Based on the Pretense of Moral Authority. Keith Levenberg, by the way, thank you for making me aware of that. This is a must-read. Shelby Steele is at the Hoover Institution in Stanford, California, a black conservative. He's been writing for a long time. He's written a lot of good stuff through the years. And one thing that will grab your attention is you really have to see the image they use of the white protester in Portland, Oregon, with a so concerned expression on his face. This is while he's holding a pre-printed placard that says, racism is real, white privilege is real, oppression is real, fear is real, resistance is real. Let me just read you the first paragraph or so of it, because I'm getting cold. It's certainly enough to get many of you hooked on reading it. He writes, the recent flurry of marches, hold on, I gotta re-grip this. The recent flurry of marches, demonstrations, and even riots, along with the Democratic Party's spiteful reaction to the Trump presidency, exposes what modern liberalism has become, a politics shrouded in pathos. Unlike the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, when protesters wore their Sunday best and carried themselves with heroic dignity, today's liberal marches are marked by incoherence and downright lunacy, hats designed to evoke sexual organs, poems that scream in anger yet have no point to make, and an hysterical anti-Americanism. Now, all this suggests lostness, the end of something rather than the beginning. What is ending? America, since the 60s, has lived through what might be called an age of white guilt. We may still be in the age, but the Trump election suggests an exhaustion with the idea of white guilt and with the drama of culpability, innocence, and correctness in which it mires us. White guilt is not actual guilt. Surely most whites are not assailed in the night by feelings of responsibility for America's historical mistreatment of minorities. Moreover, all the actual guilt in the world would never be enough to support the hegemonic power that the mere pretense of guilt has exercised in American life for the last half century. And it goes on. You should read that. Shelby Steele in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. And I know a lot of Wall Street Journal articles are not accessible unless you subscribe. This one seems to be. Hold on a second. Give you another view of Helena. Mount Helena I'm too close to now that you can't really see it. Let me just, and the comment section is great. Let me just read you something, just one of the comments. There's so many of them that are good here. But this is funny about the guy in the picture. Hilarious. Shelley Mitchell writes, I've been looking at this pitiful caricature of an Oregonian with his stupid sign and sad but wonderfully barbered face for 3 days now. I think these things about this picture. One, he's about 6 generations removed from the people that set out on the 6-month journey from St. Louis to Oregon. Those people had no iPads or iPhones, so no clue what lay ahead of them. They only had a dream and they were willing to risk all for that dream. They were Americans. 2, the critter in this picture has had almost all of that American bred out of him. He wouldn't last a week on that trip under the same conditions as his predecessors. You can see on his face he has no dream that he would risk all for. To which, this is a great comment, that John Trotman replied to that previous one. He writes, I am befuddled looking at him. I was hoping that he just needed a few bucks, so someone gave him this sign to stand there like a tool, but I am afraid that your analogy is the correct one. And yes, his beard is perfectly groomed. So that's it. That's my sunrise report. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll give a quick shot of me if my fingers de-numb enough. I'm not wearing gloves because then I can't work too 2 iPhones that are required to do this. Just let you know that. Here I am, and there is me with the sun in the background. And thank you for watching this from Helena, Montana.